All right, hey, welcome back to our series Behind the Curtain. We are talking about issues of church methodology and kind of why we do things the way we do them, just as a tool and a resource to help kind of us grow as a church community and really understand how we're pursuing Jesus together. So today we're going to have a really exciting, very controversial topic, which is worship style and why we do worship the way we do, the music that we use, the volume that we use, and all that. And so I've got with us Justin Michael, who's our creative media director, and Michael Dutcher, our worship director. And so we're going to talk through just issues of worship. And so, Justin, talk to us a little bit about just when it comes to musical style, right, and how that works. Like, why you think this style that we use is important, and how what that says about kind of our culture and how we use style to kind of reach a community.
Yeah, so music is a language. It's got multiple, languages, multiple dialects all around the world, and we each are kind of raised listening to different types of music, and so we get a familiarity and we can kind of understand it a little better when we've listened to it for most of our lives. If you dropped me into Thailand and I heard some person there who wrote some worship music and stuff, like I might be able to tell whether it's joyful or whether it's solemn, but I'm not really going to understand nuance beyond that, just because the instrumentation will be very different, and I just won't relate to it very much. So not that it won't be enjoyable, that it won't be really fun to listen to, but it may not kind of allow me the freedom to speak with the Lord with that, because I'm more trying to just kind of figure it out as I listen to it. So that's one reason for worship music to kind of develop over time, because music develops over time. And my grandmother, the stuff she grew up in church singing with that type of piano playing and that type, that was developed from bar tunes and pub tunes, believe it or not, even though it sounds like traditional and holy to us, but it had, its own source in like the common culture and in that style of, that kind of rhythmic playing the piano, that came from pub tunes and bar tunes. So that has changed, over time. Music that we all listen to has changed over time. So as a way to make it useful, it needs to kind of update with our language, similar to a translation of the Bible. We've got Common English Bible now. That's not adapting to culture and like letting culture win. That's allowing the words of God to actually for us to be able to better understand them and better interact with them.
Yeah. So music is a language that should speak to the culture of the people that it's in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great.
Absolutely.
Would you want to say anything about just worship style and why you see that, or the value that you see in doing worship in a more contemporary setting than perhaps a traditional setting?
Yeah, I don't even know if I could say it any better than Justin just did, but I think it's just what people connect with the most right now. I think they listen to similar music outside of church, and like what Justin was saying, I don't think that is wrong. I don't think it has to be separate. The music you listen to outside of church has to sound completely different than the music you listen to inside of church. I think I love that our style of music, I love that it's very dynamic. It moves, it takes you through highs and lows, but I think we have just a great common ground with the style that we have, and
Yeah, that's great.
And real quick too, one of the things that's exciting to see as music has even developed, I would say in like the last 5 years, worship music, is that people are figuring out a way to kind of blend some gospel, some folk, and some what you might just call more like vanilla contemporary. Mm-hmm. And there's some really beautiful songs coming out of that, and even our church is being blessed and becoming more diverse. And so as our band becomes more diverse, we'll be able to tackle a few more styles than we're currently skilled to do. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. All right, well, let's shift gears from style to volume, because this is one of the questions that we get a lot is, man, why is it so loud and all that? And you hear it enough that it's like, okay, so why do we do the loud volume? Does it need to be so loud to be worshipful? And what's the benefit of the, because sometimes understanding the why helps you appreciate the what. And so, as someone kind of running that with that tech team, why is the music so loud?
Well, I guess two reasons. So if you're working at home or you're at a coffee shop or whatever, you're writing, you're reading, a little background music is nice. It can kind of get some creative juices flowing. But the minute it gets too loud, it becomes a distraction. Well, I think the inverse of that is true. If the music is loud and a little bit overwhelming, then it omits other distractions because it's kind of the only thing you can think about. It's immersive like that. So I think it's useful for encountering the Lord in that way, just because it helps us, as busy-minded humans, just kind of let go of some things and put them to the side. And then secondly, as someone who's not a worship leader, I don't have the utmost confidence in my own singing voice. So first time I ever went to a church with really loud music, I started singing, and then I just started singing louder, and I realized this is wonderful. I feel like I'm really letting go, and the person beside me can't really hear me, so I don't, I'm not worried about how on pitch I am and if they're judging me, so for me it's a freer environment.
Right, for the non-vocally skilled people like myself, the ability to worship freely without the fear of your voice actually being a distraction for the person next to you is very liberating, because you can dive in, and I don't have to, because like when I sing, my voice is so bad, I will deliberately keep it slightly quieter than the volume of the room. And so the louder the room is, the more I have that freedom to really just express and jump into it without the fear of that person being like, why is my ear bleeding, kind of a thing. So yeah, that's no, I like that, the kind of immersive nature of it, and it kind of clears your head of everything else so that we can focus on the worship itself and not be thinking about, what am I doing after this and how's that going to kind of work. So as the worship guy, as you're leading that, you kind of have a lot of say over how loud that volume is. Do you have anything to kind of add to that, or stuff that you want to make sure we understand about our overall volume?
Yeah, again, I think Justin answered it extremely well. That, and it's another thing where we try to find a good balance, a good middle ground with it. We don't want it too quiet where people are shy and scared to sing. We don't want it too loud where it's actually damaging to your ears, or all you can hear is the music. We want it to be in a good middle ground where people can sing loudly and confidently, and yet at the same time be able to hear the collective of voices together. And I've done a ton of research to make sure we are operating within safe, OSHA recommended levels. We use a decibel meter in the back, and we constantly measure the sound. I've trained the sound guys to keep it within certain limits and a certain range, and so that's the balance that we have found that it's been a good middle ground for us.
Okay. Yes, because it's important that even though it's loud and it's great to have that immersion, we also don't want to be damaging and detrimental to a person's hearing by doing that. So our music is loud, but it's safe loud, and we're very careful about that. Great. Well, yeah, one of the things that I think is just so important when it comes to the worship conversation, because worship is especially a preference-oriented thing, which is so counterintuitive to what worship is actually meant to be. Worship is about recognizing the worship of Jesus, how great he is, how glorious he is, and so somehow kind of in our natural kind of human natures, and that we try to take what's for God and make it about us. And I think worship is one of the biggest places where we lose that battle, because it becomes about our preference, it becomes about our style choices, what we want that to be. And if you look through scripture, though, you're not going to find specific instructions as to what worship should be styled like. If you go through the Psalms, even for the people, because I grew up in a church that was all hymns, like instruments were from the devil, because the piano started off in a bar. And so if you did that, you're basically just worshiping the devil if you have a piano playing hymns for Jesus. And so it's like, okay, that never made sense to me. But what you get is this overreaction to it. Well, a lot of the Psalms say, with the accompaniment of musical instruments. And so even the Psalms are writing in there going, hey, there's instruments involved in this thing. And so a lot of times I think what happens is we try to make our preferences Jesus' preferences, our history with music and worship, the way that Jesus likes it. And so we try to transcend the teachings of Scripture. Say, well, you have to do it like this. I mean, I've had people come in and talk to me like, oh, you can't worship Jesus like that because you have instruments on a stage. And it's like, where's that in the Bible? You have no basis for that description. And so Jesus says in John 4:23, a time is coming and has no come when true worshipers will worship in spirit and in truth. And so he talks about this. The nature, the heart of worship is to worship truth in spirit, and to do that in a way that's not about, there's no preference orientation there. Colossians 3:16 talks about worshiping with grace, in singing songs with grace in our hearts. And so I think what happens in worship is when we make it about us and we make it about our preference, it actually stops being worship. And so more detrimental to the worship of Jesus than any style ever could be, whether there's drums or not drums. I mean, I don't care what your preference is for it. But to make that about your preference rather than to make it about Jesus actually stops it from being worship. And I think that's the thing that we've got to be careful of. Is okay, maybe the style isn't exactly what your preference would be, but as for those who have that problem, it goes, okay, well, let's understand that we're doing this style not because we're trying to be edgy and cool, but because we believe this is the best way to reach people and to connect with people at this time. And the moment we feel like that changes and that there's a better style, a better resource, a better way of engaging people in worship, we will change our worship style because it's about Jesus, not about us. And so I say that now going, I like the musical style that we have. 10 years from now, that probably won't be true, but I'm still going to be championing this is the most effective way for us to reach people and help people worship Jesus. That's what we need to do, even if I hate the music. And that's what it means to be mature in Jesus, is that you don't make it about you make it about him. And so that's, I think ultimately the thing we want to make sure that is very clear about worship is that if it's not focused on Jesus, it's not worship anymore. And that's what needs to be reflected. We need to remind ourselves of that over and over again, because if you do a song that I don't like, and I'm like, oh, I just don't like that song, so I'm not going to praise you. No, Jesus is still worthy of praise, even if I don't particularly enjoy a certain song. So it's like, you got to get over yourself. I think that's a trap of the devil. And so I think the nature of worship is that we do it and make it all about Jesus. So.
And I look forward to the day that if I have grandkids, they're listening to some worship music, and I'm like, what is this?
Right. Like, this is
And I'm
so
going to
odd.
remember, yeah, it all comes around. It's just one big cycle.
I've already caught it coming around a little bit. I mean, there's some worship music being put out now that's becoming very popular, even to teenagers today. And I'm like, this is worship music? Like, yes, it is.
Oh, I am 31 years old, so it makes sense. All right.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us for our Behind the Curtain series. We'll see you again soon.